So for our topic this morning, we have divisions of literature with emphasis on elements and imagery in poetry. Okay, so for our learning objectives, at the end of the discussion, we will be able to explain what literature is, then differentiate the two major divisions of literature by giving examples, and then identify the basic elements of poetry, then describe the different modern classification type of poetry, and then the last one, give the different literary devices used in poetry. Okay, so let's start by defining literature etymologically. Now, what do you mean by etymology? Now, etymology refers to the origin or derivation of a certain word. So the word literature is derived from the Latin term litera, which means letter, because writers make use of letters in writing literary works. Okay, so now literature has been defined differently by various writers. Okay, first, it is defined as an artistic representation of life in different forms of expressions. Meaning to say, literature or literary works are creatively represented by the different authors and writers, which can be described as written and sometimes spoken materials. Okay, so another definition here is that literature is a preserved writings of a country or people, because these writings or these literary works are handed down from one generations to another. So this has been maintained and kept alive up to this time. Okay, so another definition here is that literature is the embodiment of nations' traditions, customs, and cultures. So this is the collection of creative writings of a particular nation, people or group, culture, language, or period in history. So the last definition here is that it is a vehicle of experiences, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and attitudes about a given topic. So literature is where we can transport our experiences, our thoughts, our feelings, and our attitudes. Okay, so let's move on with the importance of literature. Why is literature important? Okay, number one, better appreciation of our literary heritage. So here, we give recognition to our literary heritage. We learn to appreciate it, okay? And then the second one, transmitter of values, okay? Now, events, as we read them in literature, make us look at ourselves and live through the experiences of the characters. Now, we glean from the stories, the morals that lead to good life, like honesty, respect, love of country or patriotism, justice, honor, and others. Okay? So another importance is that preserver of ideals, customs, and traditions, because literature is our link of the past. Now, we get a glimpse of our ancestors' way of life by reading their stories and poems. So reflecting on their practice, beliefs, and attitudes make us understand more our roots, thereby inspiring us to strengthen our ideals, customs, traditions at the present. Okay, so another importance is that it is the mirror of our culture because literature reflects the cultures of different races. Now, those who do not have the resources to travel personally and observe the ways of people from other parts of the world, they may enrich their knowledge through literature. So, knowing how people from the other side of the planet live broadens our perception of life and humanity. Okay? So, another importance is that literature is the agent of change. Okay? Agent of change. Now, history bears records of significant changes in society brought about by literature. So the choice of Tagalog, for example, as the basis for Filipino, which is the national language of the Philippines, has been partially due to the popularity of writings in Tagalog like Francisco Balagtas Florante at Laura. Now, today, literature in the mass media is a potent force swaying public opinion. So ideas delivered whether orally or in writing can greatly influence people's thinking. So they can make or unmake heroes and presidents. Okay? Now, the next importance is that literature is a source of pleasure. I know you will agree with me. Like other forms of art, literature entertains and gives pleasure. So some people read literature for fun, while some read for wisdom they get from it. Okay? So these are the importance of literature. Now, let's move on to the two divisions of literature. The two major divisions of literature are prose and poetry. Now, prose consists of writings within the common flow of conversation in sentences and paragraphs. Meaning to say, prose is written in an ordinary form, making use of sentences and paragraphs. Now, this prose can be fiction or non-fiction. So what is fiction? It is based on the imagination of the writers. It is not true. It is not real. It is just a fiction. Now, non-fiction is based on truth or real life situation, or it is based on true to life story. Okay? Now, the next one is poetry. Poetry, on the other hand, refers to those expressions written in verse with measure, rhyme, lines, and stanzas. Okay? Now, what are the different types of poetry? So there are different types of poetry like short story. Now, it is a brief form of fiction dealing with a simple and single plot that makes it a short story. Now, example of short story or maikling kwento in Tagalog are Ang Lumang Tren sa Purok Mahinahon, Si Julio at ang Sapatero sa Kanto, Ang Bahay na Marmol sa Gitna ng Gubat. So these are examples of short story. I chose Tagalog title because this is Philippine literature. Okay, the next type of prose is novel. Okay, novel is an extensive prose or story divided into chapters. So it is divided into several chapters. It is very detailed. Okay, example of novels are No Limitangere and El Filibusterismo, which were written by Dr. Jose Rizal. Okay, and we have also Florante at Laura, written by Francisco Balagtas. Okay, so we have here essay, an expository prose composition, which explains an idea, theory, or point of view. Okay, the indolence of the Filipino and the La Solidaridad by Dr. Jose Rizal are examples of essay. And then we have here legend or alamat. Okay, this is a story of origin. Okay, it is usually fiction. Okay, so example is the story of Piña. Okay, and the other one, why fish has scales. Okay, so another one here is fable. Fable is a brief story that tells a lesson or moral. Usually the characters are animals, but they are given human characteristics. So examples of fables are si Pagong at si Maching, or the monkey and the turtle, ang langgam at ang tipaklong. Okay, usually the characters here are animals. Okay, so another one here we have plays or drama. This is a story presented on stage with acts and scenes. Okay, it could be drama, it could be play, could be drama, or plays could be drama, comedy, tragedy, epic, adventure, or horror. Okay, so another type of prose is news. It is a report of everyday events in society. Okay, and then biography and autobiography. Okay, so what is the difference between the two? Biography is a record of one's life written by other person. Okay, whereas autobiography, it is a record of one's life written by the person himself. Okay, and then we have diary. Okay, diary is a personal account of important events in the writer's life, usually accomplished daily. That makes it a diary. Okay, and then we have letter. It refers to actual written communication. Okay, and then moving on to poetry, we have three kinds of poetry. Okay, so we have lyric poetry, we have narrative poetry, and we have dramatic poetry. Okay, so let's have first lyric poetry. So it is an expression of poets' personal feelings, originally intended to be sung to the accompaniment of lyre or any string instrument. That makes it lyric poetry. Okay, now what are the different forms of lyric poetry? Folk songs or awiting bayan. These are poems intended to be sung. And then we have sonnets. It is composed of 14 lines dealing with emotions and idea. And then we have elegy. Elegy is a mournful poem which expresses feelings of grief and melancholy, in which the theme is about death of someone. So this is for, this is a poem for the dead. Okay, so ode, it is a poem of praise or glorifying an event or individual. Okay, when you are praising or glorifying a certain person or a certain event or a certain place. Okay, psalms or dalit. Okay, sacred song or poem used in praising or worshiping God. Okay, so psalms are usually taken from the Old Testament, Salmo. Okay, and then we have corridos, measures of 8 syllables or octosyllabic and recited to a marital beat, as if you are marching. Okay, example here is Ibong Adarna. Okay, so the second kind of poetry is narrative poetry. These are poems that narrates a story or incident, usually follows a chronological order. Okay, when you say chronological order, it follows the proper sequencing of events. Okay, so what are the forms of narrative poetry? We have ballad, simple and short poem composed to be sung. And then we have epic. It is a long narrative poem about heroes and gods. Epico, epic. Okay? Then metrical romance, a love story in verse with the adventure of knights and lords and their ladies during the age of chivalry. Okay? And then we have metrical tale. It is a poem about ordinary folks' origin. Okay? And then the last one we have here, dramatic poetry. So it encompasses highly emotional story that is written in verse and meant to be recited. This would include dramatic monologue and rhyme verse. Okay? So when you say dramatic poetry, it encompasses highly emotional story that makes it dramatic. Okay? And then, what are the basic elements of poetry? Okay? So, we have the speaker. Now, every poem has a speaker or a voice that talks to the reader. And then, in prose, the narrator is the speaker, but not necessarily the author. Now, in poetry, the speaker is the poet, but it can be a fictional person, an animal, or a thing. Okay, so another element of poetry is rhyme. Okay, what is a rhyme? So rhyme is a repetition of the same or similar sounds occurs in two or more words, usually at the end of lines in poems or songs. So in other words, rhyme is the sounds of words at the end of the line. Okay? And it should be in rhyme or the same or similar. Okay? And then the other one is rhythm. Rhythm is the pattern of sound created by the arrangement of stressed and unstressed syllable in a line. Okay? An example of rhythm is the rising and falling of someone's voice. So rhythm is the overall tempo or pace at which the poem unfolds. Okay? Now, the other element is meter. Poetry has meter. Meter refers to the measured beat or patterns of beats established by stressed and unstressed syllables, which set the overall rhythm of certain poems. Okay? And then the other one is the line. Okay? Poetry has line or word or row of words that may or may not form a complete sentence. Okay? And then the other one, the last one is stanza. Okay? We all know that poem has stanza. It is a group of lines forming a unit. Now, the stanzas in poem are separated by a space. Okay? And then, what are the modern classification types of poem? Okay? Now, we have acrostic poem. Okay? Now, this poem consists of, a poem in which the letter of each line, when read vertically, spells out a word, which is usually the subject of the poem. Now, acrostic poem actually is like an acronym. Okay? So, for example, the poem is about COVID. Okay? Each letter of the word COVID should give its description. Okay? For example, C. C means contagious. O means overstaying, because as we all know, COVID is already overstaying. And then V, virus, I, infectious, and D, disease. Okay, so that is acrostic poem. Okay, how about shape poem? Okay, words are placed to make the shape of an object or ideas described. So a poem about the stars, for example, would take the shape of a star. A poem about Christmas would take a shape of any Christmas symbol. Okay, and then we have a diamond poem. Okay, it is a 7-line diamond-shaped poem that specifies part of speech in each line. And then the very popular haiku. It is a Japanese type poem of 3 lines, each with a fixed number of syllables, mainly about nature and feelings. Okay, so those are the different classification of poetry. Now, let's move on to the devices used in poetry. Okay, so we can make use of imagery. Imagery is the use of description that helps the reader imagine how something looks, sounds, feels, smells, or tastes. So most of the time, it refers to appearance. For example, the young bird's white feathered wing flutter as he made his way across nighttime sky. So there is or there are vivid description about the bird. Okay, and then the old man took the handful of dust and sifted it through his fingers. Okay, so that is imagery. So we make use of description. Okay, and images. Now the second device is figures of speech. Okay, figures of speech is also known as figurative language. Now, it is a deviation from the ordinary use of words in order to increase their effectiveness. So this is the opposite of literal language. Okay. Now, there are several figures of speech, but I have chosen the commonly used figures of speech, just like simile. Okay. Simile is the comparison of two unlike objects or things using like, as, and so in comparing. Okay, for example, she is like a fairy. Okay, so the beauty of the girl here is being compared to the beauty of the fairy. Okay, using like. Okay, so she is like a fairy. And then we have here, Amanda is as brave as a lion. So Amanda and lion are being compared for their bravery. Okay, so using as. So Amanda is as brave as a lion. And then here, another one, Mrs. Velasco is crazy like a fox. So Mrs. Velasco is being compared to the fox uh, in terms of her craziness. And then the house is as clean as a whistle. Okay? And then we have here metaphor. Okay? Metaphor is a comparison of two unlike objects or things without using like, as, or so. Now, this is an implied comparison. This is the opposite of simile. Okay? For example, the snow is a white blanket. So the snow is being compared to a white blanket. Her long hair was a flowing golden river. Okay? The calm lake was a mirror. Okay? My mother's face is a star to me. Okay, kisses are the flowers of affection. So there is an implied comparison in metaphor. Okay, another one here we have personification. It is giving human qualities to an animal, object, or abstract idea. Okay, so let's take the example here. Now, the wind whispers softly to my ears. Okay, so we are giving the human quality of whisper to the wind, and therefore personification is used. Okay, the tree sways on the top of the hill. So in this example, we are giving the human quality of swaying to the tree. Hence, it is personification. And then opportunity is knocking at her. So in here, in this example, we are giving the human quality of knocking to an abstract idea, opportunity. And this is personification. And then my alarm clock yells at me to get out of bed every morning. So in this example, we are giving the human qualities of yelling to the alarm clock. That makes it personification. Okay? And then we have hyperbole. Okay? Do you know of a person who is hyperbolic? Okay? So hyperbole is a figure of speech that uses extreme exaggeration to make a point or show emphasis. So there is an extreme exaggeration here. For example, I've told you 100 times how much I love you. Okay? And then, I am hungry. I could eat a horse. So probably he is very hungry that he could eat a horse. And then he is as skinny as a toothpick. Her brain is the size of the pea. And then I have a million things to do today. Okay? So that is hyperbole. And then the next one is symbolism. It is a practice or art of using an object or a word to represent an abstract idea. An action, person, place, word, or object can all have symbolic meaning. For example, a dove is a symbol of peace. Okay, probably because a dove is white. That makes it a symbol of peace. And then a mountain is a symbol of success. Okay, black is used to represent death or evil. Okay, so another one, roses stand for romance. Isn't it that when someone gave you or gives you roses, it means romance? Okay, a dog often stands for loyalty or devotion. Okay, that is symbolism. Another figure of speech is alliteration. Alliteration is a term used to describe a literary device in which a series of words begin with the same consonant sound, just like a tongue twister. Okay? For example, she sells seashells by the seashore. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. A good cook could cook as much cookies as a good cook who could cook cookies. Another one, black bug beat a big black bear. And then we have the last one, I saw a saw that could outsaw any other saw I ever saw. So alliteration is just like a tongue twister. Okay? And then we have here onomatopoeia. What is onomatopoeia? It is a word that actually looks like the sound it makes, and we can almost hear those sounds as we read. Okay, example, beep, vroom, clang, slam, splash, bum, bubble, boom, gargle, crash. Okay, I have here example. The buzzing bee flew away. So what is the sound made by a bee? Buzz, buzz. So the buzzing bee flew away. And then the large dog say, bow wow. Okay? What is the sound made by a dog? Bow wow. Okay. And then the snake slithered and hissed. Okay, hissed. So the snake hissed. Okay, so that is onomatopoeia. Okay, so another one, the last one is enjambment. Okay, so what is enjambment in poetry? It is a continuing line after the line breaks. So whereas many poems end lines with the natural pause at the end of a phrase or with punctuation as end-stop lines. Okay, so enjambment ends a line in the middle of a phrase, allowing it to continue onto the next line as an enjambed line. Okay, so meaning to say there is a pause. Okay, there is a pause that at the end of a phrase. Okay, for example, we were running to find what had happened beyond the hills. Okay, and then the other one, the sun hovered above the horizon, suspended between night and day. Okay, so those are the different devices used in poetry. So you can make use of imagery and the different figures of speech. Okay, so to sum up our lesson for today or for our discussion, we discussed the different divisions of literature. We have prose and poetry. We have the different kinds of prose and poetry also. We have discussed we had discussed the different uh, classification of poetry and the different elements of poetry. And the last one, we made mention on the different devices used in poetry. Okay?